The 24-70 2.8 G Master lens is what we're going to be talking about today. This is the Mark II version. Well, this obviously isn't. I had to send it back to Sony. This is actually my Tamron 2875, the old, OG first version. But the 24-70 is a focal range that a lot of people love, and this could be a really great lens for wedding videographers and photographers, filmmakers, anyone who needs that nice 24-70 versatile range with the 2.8 aperture. Now, obviously Sony have their 24-70 already. This is the Mark II version. So obviously the Mark II version is going to have some benefits over the last version. So the 24-70 is so close to being a perfect lens. It's low chromatic aberration. The ghosting is very well controlled. Flares are great. The image quality is fabulous in the center, but when it comes to the outside, it does get a little bit soft, specifically at 50 millimeters. It's actually quite soft. And that's going through the 2.8, 3.2, f4, sometimes even at f8 is when it starts to sharpen up. But you'll have to see the image quality test after this when we talk about some of the specs. So the Sony 24-70 has a focal range of 24mm to 70mm, has a constant aperture of f2.8 and a minimum aperture of f22. It has a front filter thread of 82mm, the closest focusing distance of 21cm at 24mm or 30cm at the 70mm focal range, which is really good. It has a new feature with the zoom switch for smooth or tight resistance. It has the standard G Master aperture toggle to declick or click it, and the new feature of the iris ring lock. It has a manual or autofocus switch, two custom buttons, which one on the side and one at the top, and obviously the exceptional build quality of the standard G Master lens range. Overall, this is smaller, lighter, and more compact than the G Master version 1. So I think the great thing about the G Master lenses is the new linear focusing motor in there. It's all ran by magnets on rails, and it is so fast and accurate. The good thing is that you do have that flexibility to have really accurate, fast autofocus, or you can do manual focus pulls from one spot to another continuously, and it be pretty much spot on. That is a great thing because you can actually use a wireless follow focus system on there. This is my Tilta Nucleus Nano with the Tilta handle. This is my very similar setup that I use with the FX6 a lot. Now you do have that versatility to have really fast autofocus, or you could have really accurate manual focus. That is the con about manual lenses, is that it's completely manual, so you don't have autofocus. With the FX6, it's a great documentary camera. Sometimes you actually want to film with manual, but sometimes you actually want to utilize a really fast autofocus system. So having a G Master lens with the 24-70 could be a really good option for the FX6 if you don't worry about OSS. So it doesn't have OSS in the body. It's lighter and faster, but doesn't have OSS because a lot of the alpha bodies have IBIS inside the camera. That's why Sony aren't producing OSSs in the lens, but that's probably where you'd get the 24 to 105 if you did want stability with the FX6, like a documentary sort of camera. So I'd also just like to say thank you to each and every one of you guys that have subscribed to my YouTube channel already and been liking and commenting in obviously the comments section. I really appreciate all of you guys for your support, and if you want this look from the A7 IV, I do have my LUT available. Link will be in the description below. But yeah, let's get back into the video. So I just got the email from the Sony rep saying the pricing, because I am recording this obviously before the embargo date. So when you're seeing this, the Sony lens has also just been released. Now the Canon version comes in at about $23.99 US on B&H. That's the 24-70 RF version, whereas the Sony one is pretty much the same price, roughly about $2,400 US. Now it's $32.99 Australian dollars, which converts to that, $2,400 US, depending on import tax and all that kind of stuff. But if it is that price and it's priced pretty much the same as the Canon, it deserves that price range. It's the G Master lens. It is the cream of the crop. It's the best version you can get for the Sony version when it comes to 24-70. And yeah, it definitely is very well priced. Now this lens doesn't seem to be perfectly parfocal, but it's very close when it comes to being a parfocal lens. Now if you don't know what a parfocal lens is, if you are at 24mm and focus on a subject, then zoom out to 70mm, it should stay exactly the same for it to be parfocal, but it is just like a hair, maybe a millimeter or two off when it comes to being parfocal. You can see when I actually toggle the focus mapping here, and you can see it's just slightly out of focus, but it's still really great performance when it comes to this lens. So one of the greatest features about the 24-70 is actually the zoom ring. Now this is a really, really good design. It actually gives you the strength that you actually want to choose. You can actually choose it to be really soft and zoom in and out quite easily, or you click that little switch and it can zoom out a lot harsher. So you can actually dial in your zooming if you really, really wanted to, or you can just have it on that hard range. So if you are slinging the lens around, it's not gonna fully extend by itself. Now it also does have that iris lock, which like I said, I hope is going to be in all of the G Master lenses from now on, because there's so many times that I've actually flicked my lens from A to 16 because they're pretty much just one notch away. And I just really wish there was a whole bunch of iris locks on all the other G Master lenses, but obviously this is a newer feature and I'm so glad that this one actually has that. So I did take this out in a couple of different shoots, especially when I did have the PZ lens. I got this at the same time. So that was a few weeks ago now. And I did actually do a couple of shoots with this one. And I'm gonna show you a few images that I got out of this lens. Okay, now let's switch over to the image quality and the performance of this lens. Okay, so the image quality test, the one that we've all been waiting for, at 24mm, and you go into the center at f2.8, and it is nice and sharp at 24mm, but you can see there's that barrel distortion. There is no current profile corrections in there, but I did put the 24-70 f4, and that seems to correct that barrel distortion for now. There obviously will be profile corrections in Lightroom once this lens has been released. Well, let's go out to the corners at f2.8, and you can see it's relatively sharp at f2.8. That's not bad. We stop it down to f3.2. It gets sharper, more contrast, and at f4 it gets really sharp with really good contrast. Now we go to 35mm, and in the center it is absolute tack sharp. Great performance once again. We go out to the corners. It's a little bit soft. We stop it down to f3.2, still soft, and at f4 out in the corners, and you know, it does get a little bit better at f4 out in the corners. Now we go to 50mm at f2.8 in the center, really tack sharp, high contrast. We go out to the corners and it is very, very soft. You can see it's quite ghosty there. At f3.2 and at f4, it doesn't sharpen up until about f8 in the corners. Now we go to 70mm in the center, same again, absolute tack sharp. At the corners at f2.8, it's a bit ghosty, not as sharp. We stop it down to f3.2, it's a little bit sharper. And at f4, it does sharpen up a little bit. It is still relatively soft. It does get a little bit better at f5.6 and at f8. Now overall, it's a pretty decent performance from this lens. It just comes down to that 50mm out in the corners. I was expecting a little bit better, especially since it's a G Master lens. But you know, if you are a landscape photographer, I highly recommend don't shoot at 50mm. At the 24mm, you're probably getting that best performance when it comes to center sharpness and edge sharpness. So now you're probably thinking, well, you know, the 24-70 isn't very good because it doesn't have that center to corner sharpness throughout the whole range. Well, neither did the last one, and neither does any of the other competitors as well. They're not perfectly sharp because it's a zoom lens. There's a whole bunch of optical elements in there moving around. It's going to be very difficult. When it comes to prime lenses, that's when you can get optical sharpness from, you know, edge to edge. 35mm is phenomenal, the 24mm is phenomenal. The 85mm has its quirks and cons, but it is still a really good lens. The biggest reasons why you would get a G Master lens is the bokeh quality is just absolutely creamy, and that is one of the biggest reasons why I've invested in all the G Master lenses. Well, not all of them, but a lot of the G Master lenses. So I guess one of the coolest features of this thing that's different between the first version and this version is the customizable buttons. There's one on the side and there's one on the top. Now, I'm not a complete user of these customizable buttons on the lenses. It doesn't really work with my workflow, but I know a lot of people with wedding videography who need to change settings and all these kind of things on the fly. So this could be really good for them, especially if there are 2 extra customizable buttons on the lens itself. Now, obviously there is that autofocus to manual focus switch as as well, which is pretty much standard with all the G Master lenses, and that obviously is a really great feature to still have. But those 2 extra customizable buttons could be really good for a lot of people. But there's only a couple of people that I would recommend this to, and that's people who are actually working in the industry, making money. So wedding videographers, landscape photographers, portrait photographers, videographers, all those kind of things that actually makes money and you're able to pay this lens off, or people who just have a whole lot of cash. Pretty much it, yeah. If you have a whole lot of cash, you can afford this, but when it comes to hobbyists, it might be a little bit too expensive for what you're actually gonna be getting out of this. This is where you have the Tamron version, the 28-75 f2.8, or you have the Sigma 24-70 art lens. Really depends on what you're doing and do you have the money? Can you afford it? Is it going to be worth it in the long run? But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. That would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.